And for those of you who are just joining us, the war in Afghanistan is officially over after nearly 20 years.
Yeah, the Pentagon announced the final U.S. military plane left the country this afternoon. Joining us right now with some insight is retired Special Operations Air Force officer Major Glenn Ignazio. Major, appreciate you joining us first of all, but you were on the initial military planning operation for Afghanistan 2 decades ago. What was the country like then, and what do you think it is now as we leave? What's changed there?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's actually, it's a very surreal time because 20 years ago, we had a very small northern resistance and Taliban was ruling the country. And here we are 20 years again, and it's exactly the same thing. The difference is now is we have 200 to 500 Americans abandoned and held back out there, and probably 50,000 or more Afghan people that have helped us caught behind enemy lines. So it's a strange, chaotic time on the ground in Afghanistan right now.
Yeah, and I think the last numbers that Secretary Blinken, who spoke a short time ago, as he said they believed about 100 Americans had been left there who may want to still get out. Let's talk about the operation to get people out. Over the last few weeks, the Pentagon reported it's evacuated 79,000 civilians from Afghanistan just since August 14th, including 6,000 Americans. Talk about just the scale and the scope of what it took to get so many people out in such a short time frame.
Yeah, I mean, the airlift at Karzai International Airport and the military that, came in and took care of them in the C-17 cargo aircraft. The aircraft has been practically overloaded. I've never seen that many people on board airplanes, and I was a military Air Force pilot. The situation was chaotic getting into the airport because, believe it or not, the checkpoints were manned by the Taliban, and Americans were actually turned away. So there's a lot of different things that are happening on the ground than what you saw coming out of D.C. But this is not to politicize that. It's just to say that, the movement was amazing for our military, but the most incredible part was to see the civilian organizations, usually made up of former military, special operations, and others, that have come together and have moved thousands of people out of the country. It's unprecedented. Historically, nothing like this I've ever seen before, and it was all civilians or at least former veterans that have actually made this happen. That's what I find absolutely amazing.
And Major, you mentioned some of the Americans and allies left behind. What do we know about that? What can we expect now? So there's some people who want to leave the country. We had this deadline of August 31st. What do we expect now the Taliban is in control of the airport and of that country? Is there a special way to get those people out? Is there an agreement? How does August 31st play in politically and practically when it comes to trying to get these people out of that country?
Well, they're scared. They've been left behind. As a member of combat rescue in the Air Force, we don't leave anybody behind, and we have moved mountains and put dozens of people at risk to save one individual. My team, myself, numerous. And so these Americans are left behind, and it's not by choice. So I definitely don't want anybody to think that. But we're getting calls, like I said, helping out with an organization. There's other big organizations. Pineapple Express is one that's gotten some great press. And they're calling and turning to us to try to get out. So there is no agreement that I understand. Again, the Taliban doesn't live up to any timeline and don't live up to their words unless they're going to impend violence on somebody. So it's really going to be a chess match in Afghanistan with a lot of the organizations we work with and others to try to get them out. And I know there's activity that the government's going to try to do and to help, but they are scrambling right now.
And even they admit these are very dangerous times, this time period right now. We saw the Afghan government fold under the Taliban. From what you've known, your experience with the Afghan people, do you foresee any resistance to the Taliban forming there on the ground and some kind of pushback from the people there?
Well, as I was mentioning, we had the Northern Alliance. We had the Northern Alliance in the past, and Ahmad Massoud, the senior, was one of the people that helped us. He was very, very pronounced and well known. Actually, his son is one of the leaders up there. His father was unfortunately killed by Al-Qaeda. But his son has led some of that activity, and a lot of the former special operations from the Afghan military and some of the real fighters from the Afghan military have gone up there into the Panjshir area to actually fight the Taliban. So they're trying to resist as much as possible. It's a very strange thing. Like I said, there's a lot of history in Afghanistan some people don't understand. like ISIS. ISIS formed out of Iraq from the vacuum that was left there when pulled out from the Obama administration, and now is in Afghanistan. ISIS and the Taliban don't get along. ISIS recruited people from the Taliban because they're even more extreme. So they're not friends of Taliban. So it's really going to be interesting what happens in the country and if the Taliban can actually even hold the country. So I think it could be a matter of, factions, civil war, chaos as it's normally been before we were there.
Major, before we let you go, I'm curious about this pullout, trying to get these final people out of this country, and really the effort over the last couple of days to do so. How much did the unexpected affect our ability to do that? For example, maybe the Biden administration figured, okay, August 31st, and we'll just we have the Afghans protecting us, and we'll get everybody out, and then the Taliban took over in like less than 2 weeks. And then you have the explosion at the airport from the ISIS-K pair of suicide bombers. How much did those affect the ability for us to get this done right?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of these things we knew in advance. I mean, we've been in Afghanistan for 20 years, but the best way to say it is we've really been in Afghanistan for 1 year, 20 times in a row. The reason for it is new changes with leadership of the U.S. and so forth. And the corruption has been horrendous there for the entire 20 years, nothing new. And that's one of the things that we saw. We saw payoffs. We saw officers laying down their arms. And we saw these provinces being taken over with no resistance. That's how they were able to move so fast. So that information's been out there. So it's interesting to see it as a surprise. The bombing, we knew that there was chatter out there that there was going to be a threat of a suicide bomber, but never knew when. And the repercussions from that were absolutely, horrifying. And so some of these things you can't expect when they're going to happen, but you can anticipate and put contingencies in place that they can happen.
All right, and we're certainly grateful for your insight, Major Glenn Ignazio. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much. And like I said, watch out for our veterans and our Vietnam veterans. That this is a repeat of what they experienced way back. So let's watch out for their health, and please ask for them to check in with people.
All right, some very important note to end on. We appreciate that, and certainly everyone's service, whether in Afghanistan or here at home. And stick with Fox 5. We have the latest developments out of Afghanistan for you, and we can get breaking news alerts sent right directly to your phone.